Aloha and welcome. In this video, we're going to be talking about project 30.2, in which we use our Pico W as the server, and the software that's running on our computer is going to be the client. So we're going to have host and client, where our Pico is the host, the server, and our software is on the computer we're using is the client. So all this is going to take, again, is our super simple Pico W with the big Wi-Fi chip on it and our USB micro USB connector, micro USB to USB-A connector. Again, the same rules apply. Whenever you're going to rerun something, unplug this and plug it back in. So looking through, we're going to get right into grabbing our code, and that's going to, yeah, that's going to require a little bit of changing here, and we'll get into what's going to be required. And then when we look over here, yeah, it's going to tell us that we're going to print out, in the beginning, we're going to print out our IP address and port for us to use. So we're going to be using the same client that we did before, except we're going to click on TCP client. There's not much to do in terms of our setup. You can look through this and see what each section is doing, but that's pretty much it. It's quite simple. So let's go ahead and pull up the pieces that we're going to use here. Once again, you're going to have your sketch Wi-Fi. When you click on the play button there, you'll have the following pop up. You're going to have this. It's going to be in a TCP server. Click on TCP client. It's going to say .xxx there, and that's all well and good. Oh, actually, let me unclick that. So you're going to be starting out and not connected to the server mode. Then we're going to pull up our Visual Studio here, and I'm going to slide up slowly to our important stuff. So this is the software that we're going to be running. You're going to put in your SSID, your router name, and your password. Again, this is just used for setting up the initial initializing your Pico device. So we're saying here that we're going to use port 8000, and the IP address we're going to have to figure out in a second. So we're doing in software, we're going down here, we're going to say try doing connect Wi-Fi using the router and password information that we have. That simply goes up here. It sets up our internet for station mode, client mode, in other words. Then we go over and we say, active, sure, set it up as active. We're going to then disconnect any connections. We're going to connect to the SSID and password that we send to it. Then we're going to go ahead and, while it's if config of zeros equal to all zeros, it's going to say connect to a wireless network. It's going to sleep. And then once it finally knocks out of that, it's going to return true that we're connected. And we're going to go to the next line, which is over here. So over here, we're getting the IP address. And the IP address we're going to get from wlan.ifconfig. So remember, ifconfig is your internet configuration information. So the 0th item in that list is going to be your IP address. So then we're going to be setting up a socket, and we're calling this the listening socket since we're acting as a server here. Then after we have the listening socket going, we're going to bind our IP address and our port to it. So the IP address is the one that we got here that tells us what IP address we're using. And then the port is the port that we specify up above, up here, which is 8000. So we're binding our IP address to port 8000. Then we're going to start listening. Then we're setting it up so that we're reusing the addresses and everything for the socket. Then we go into this TCP waiting stage. Then we say, while true, we're going to print out our server IP and the port, and we're going to say accepting. And then we're going to listen until we have a socket, exception there. So let's go ahead and take a look what happens when we run this. And I'll get into the rest of this in a second, but we're going to go ahead and start. Please connect the Pico. That's very important. So I hope you have yours unplugged at the beginning. Then go ahead and plug it in. Once you do and you see this go to Pico connected, then you can click on run, and you're going to see that it's saying connect to a wireless network. So it's connected. Now it spits out our IP information and our port here that we're using. So that got us up to the point of right here. So it's accepting right now. It's listening, on the socket. It doesn't have anybody connecting to it. So we're going to take this information we have here for our IP address. We're going to go over here to our client, and notice we have .xxx in the last one. That's because it doesn't know what our client or what our server is going to be. So we're going to say, hey, the server is 233, and we know that the remote port is going to be 8,000 here. So now we click on this to connect to the server, and watch what happens over here. We're going to click on connect to server, and then boom, we have accepting, and it's in accepting mode right now. So what happened up here was this listen connected.accept. This is a blocking thing. Remember, it waits at this point. And then it once it's connected, it goes and it prints out the address it connected to, and then it said connected. So then it breaks out of here, goes to this, and then it sends the message, I am a server. And boom, you have this up here telling where it came from, I am server. Great. That's the first thing. Now it's going into this wait mode like we did before, where it's saying data equals con.receive. So it's waiting to get messages. And this is blocking here. So it's not going to move to the next statement until it receives something here. So what we'll do is we'll say, I am the walrus. And you click on send, and you see that it comes through here. It's a byte structure of I am the walrus. So what happened up there was it received it. Then since the length wasn't 0, so it went down here and it printed it out, and then it returned that and sent it back over to here. So we see it's just echoing it back there. So what we're doing essentially is taking something from our client, sending it to our server. The server receives it, echoes it back to the client. So that's the same thing that we did, just the reverse direction from before. So whatever you type in here is going to come, it's going to go over here, then it's going to bounce back here as high. So whatever you put in here is going to end up here eventually. So this is another line of nonsense. And you click on that, it goes down here and bounces it back to here. So that is essentially our lesson here. So we're using TCP to bounce things from server to client back and forth. So I hope that's been helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Wow, I think I have an accident outside my apartment. But anyway, if you have any questions about this, feel free to ask. I'd be happy to help you with it. Otherwise, I will see you in the next lesson. Enjoy.